So, good evening, everyone. It's been a while since I've been able to do a live stream. So, I thought for a change tonight we would do that for a little while. And I know I didn't announce a live stream anywhere, so I suspect anyone who watches this will probably end up watching it on a replay, which is great. I hope you do watch it, and don't forget to hit the like on the video and subscribe if you can. I'd appreciate it. Helps me to continue to build and be able to live stream far more often. It is a bit of a windy night tonight. It is clear. I was really unsure, to be honest, if I was going to be able to do much of anything tonight. It was a little bit of rain earlier, and then cloud, and then rain, and then cloud, and then sun. It was kind of all over the place. So here we are. This is just a shot I took of excuse me, IC 5068, which is near the butterfly cluster. Actually, it's a 180-second sub, and I'm just going to turn off the histogram here a bit and make it a wee bit more visible. There we go. And yeah, the wind is affecting guiding a little bit tonight, but not in a large capacity. So I hope everyone enjoys. We're going to go through some targets and just basically go through what's listed as tonight's best. So for tonight's best, this IC 5068 was one of the targets. So we're going to switch up now and have a look and see what else looks interesting. We can sort of see the Cygnus loop tonight. It's quite high up, and this is what you're going to be looking for targets when you start doing observing on your own or imaging. Software like this will help you to find targets that are within the range of your telescope. So let's see if we can see Andromeda. You'll notice here it actually says Andromeda Nebula. Well, long ago, when this particular celestial body was discovered, it was believed it was a nebula. It was only later on when Edmund Hubble and others discovered that it was actually another galaxy, about 2 million light years from here, and it is believed to be larger than our own Milky Way galaxy, although now there's some debate that I've read recently in some papers that our galaxy may be as big or bigger than Andromeda, and well, yet to be determined, let's say. So let's have a look and see if we can get Andromeda in here tonight. Andromeda is allegedly on a collision course with our galaxy, and well, that's not going to happen for a few billion years, if it does happen at all. Again, even that now is in debate as to whether the two galaxies will actually collide. We've seen in astronomy other galaxies that actually have collided, and it's quite an event. The antenna galaxies would be an example of that. There are others out there. If you look up colliding galaxies on Google, you'll see some great images of that, and there are great animations on what happens when that event takes place as well, to give you an idea of how messy it can get. Stars and planets can get flung out into deep space. And stars, though, rarely collide because of the immense distance between stars and the galaxies. That would be a very rare event. So here we are, we're locked in. This first image will be really not much to look at. It's just a preview image, and we're starting guiding again here. You can see really there's no stars whatsoever. That's because we have to reset our histogram. So we'll do that, bring that back to there, and you can start to see the galaxy a little bit. You'll see the right here, the central core, and a satellite passing through. This is another thing that we have to deal with when you're doing astrophotography imaging, is these days satellites passing through, Elon Musk's constellation satellites and many others, are interfering with astrophotography, not just with amateur astronomers, but also with the larger telescopes. So this is known as M31. It has a satellite galaxy as well, just like we have. Milky Way has a satellite galaxy, actually two of them, the Large and Small Magellanic Clouds, which unfortunately from the northern hemisphere we cannot see. You'd have to go quite a bit south to see that. So let's extend this to let's say a 3-minute exposure and see what comes of that. I'm just gonna move that to the side a bit. So this is basically going to count down for 3 minutes, a single exposure. We're not stacking or anything tonight. This is just a quick tour to let you see some of the celestial objects that are available in our night sky in the northern hemisphere. For all of you who are thinking of maybe getting a telescope, there's a couple of different ways to go. Actually, there's a lot of different ways and you can go, and different telescopes. Really depends on whether you want to be visual observer, get into astrophotography, or maybe both. It really leaves your options open. Go to your local astronomy store, and there are a lot of people out there who will help you and guide you along to purchasing the right telescope for you. Cost-wise, well, that can get pretty hefty depending on the equipment you decide to buy. You can start out very simply. As a matter of fact, you can start out so simply that you can just use binoculars for visual observing, and progress as your budget and your interest in the hobby gets more and more interested in the hobby. There are great astronomy stores around here locally in the GTA. I like dealing with Ontario Telescopes, Steve Malia. He's a great guy. He's located out in Bolton, and he will be very helpful in getting you the right equipment for your budget and your end purpose. If you're into getting some really expensive equipment, certainly he can provide that as well for you. I purchased a lot of equipment from him over the years, not only telescopes but filters. I have actually one of his Gear 60s I'm using right now as a guide scope, but it's also a mini wide field telescope that I'll be using separately at some point. Right now on this particular mount that I have, which is a observatory grade mount, is an 11-inch RASA. The RASA telescope is designed specifically for imaging. It does not have any place on it that you can put an eyepiece. The camera actually goes on the front of the scope itself, which I know is kind of odd. But if you look at some of my other videos, you'll actually see how that's mounted. So that came up, and of course the histogram is pretty wacky on that, so we'll just do an auto histogram. So here you can start to see the galaxy. This is a 3-minute exposure. We'll do one more exposure, a 5-minute. You can see the core of the galaxy here. This is the core of Andromeda. You can start to see some of the spiral arms out here of the galaxy. You can see its actual another small galaxy orbiting that one. And if we hit annotate on this particular software, it should tell us all about those two galaxies, which of course, why would I think it would work? Strange but true. So usually that would put up some text and show you exactly the names of these galaxies and that sort of thing. I'm not sure why it's not working tonight. That's something we'll look into for sure. So our guiding here, as you can see, is at 0.49, which is certainly acceptable given the conditions. We are moving toward new moon, so those conditions do get better. So let's do a 300 second, which is a 5-minute exposure, and see what that gives us. And then we'll move on to another target. And Andromeda is a beautiful galaxy to look at visually, although when you see it through a telescope, don't think you're going to see what you're seeing on this particular image. It'll be kind of a fuzzy blotch depending on the telescope that you're using. Later on, as we get more into winter, we'll be able to take a look at things like planetary nebula that'll be in range of where my telescope can see. Also the Orion Nebula complex. And right now, unfortunately, Orion comes up very early in the morning in my area here in northern Brampton, Ontario, and really is kind of blocked by the houses, including my own, in front of me. Later on in the year, that definitely will be within our range to be able to see, probably late December, early January, for the best shots of it, and it's an amazing, amazing nebula to see. So right now, like I say, we're taking a look at Andromeda. You can see we have about 200 seconds left, and we'll have a look at that. And if you ever have any questions, you can certainly email us at bramptonobservatory@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you to answer your questions as best I can. And hopefully the next time I'm able to broadcast, I'll actually be able to announce it in advance so that you'll know to come out. I would love to chat with you live online. I do have the capability within my observatory to do that. The observatory I have is what's called a roll-off roof observatory, and again, if you look at any of my other videos, you'll see that and how that all works. At one point, I did have a sky pod that's made here in Ontario by another great astronomer and builder of observatories, Wayne Parker. And if you're interested in that type of observatory, you can certainly see his website or contact him directly, and he'll be able to get back to you on what would be, again, the best setup for your situation. One of the biggest things that we fight here is light pollution. I'm in Bortle 8 to 9 skies, depending on the night, depending on whether the moon is out or not, how high in the sky it is, what phase of the moon it is, but also the light pollution from Mississauga And Georgetown, which is growing, and here in Brampton, where I am, has grown exponentially. I used to be in a Bortle 6 to 7 zone here when I first moved here more than 20 years ago. And of course, development has built up all around me, and now I'm in Bortle 8 or 9 skies. There are filters, like I have a filter on this telescope right now, which is an H alpha filter, which does take care of some of that light pollution. You can buy light pollution filters, which will, again, help to only let in the light that's needed for your imaging. If you're doing visual astronomy, you can kind of get away without that type of thing. Although there are filters even for visual astronomy that will help you. There are moon filters and planetary filters if you're into looking at the planets. This telescope I have is not really designed for looking at planets. You can, and maybe we'll do that at some point, but generally it's not. So here comes our image of 5 minutes. And let's see what we get here. We'll probably have to adjust the histogram. Well, no, we don't. So again, you see it's a little brighter. To get all the detail of this galaxy, including the spiral arms that you can see, which go out quite a ways here, I would have to take many, many images of this galaxy and stack them all together in specialized software. Although some people use Photoshop, I use PixInsight. Other people use Stackerd, and there's all kinds of other software that you can actually use. So what you're doing is actually building up the image by using multiple images, subs that we call them, for each target. So for Andromeda, if you were to do 50 to 100 3-minute subs, stack them all together, it would look much better and look more like some of the images that you would see on the internet or in astronomy books and that sort of thing. That's how we actually develop and process these images, by stacking them up. It helps to eliminate background noise. Also, the camera that I'm using, which is an ASI 2600 MC Pro Color. Some people like to use what they call mono cameras, so you have to take an image or multiple images with each filter. I've done that in the past. I'm kind of a lazy astronomer. Some people say, and I tend to agree with them, you can get better images by using a mono camera and taking the images of each filter, RGB, H alpha. It's a longer process. And again, I'm kind of a lazy astronomer, so I prefer to use what are called one-shot color cameras. Although maybe at some point I'll get back into it. I am thinking about moving at some point to a darker sky area. Not in the immediate future for sure, but it would be helpful to do that. The darker skies you have, the less light pollution, the less noise in your image. Like here, I can't possibly see the Milky Way, whereas if I were 2 hours 3 hours north of here, I'd clearly be able to see the Milky Way. And I do recommend everybody goes out to a dark sky site at some point and really look at the wonders of the night sky. So let's have a look at the another target. That is the Andromeda Galaxy. And for what it is, it's actually not a bad shot. We can darken that up a little bit. There we go. and you can see a little more of the spiral arms and the center core of the galaxy. And again, I don't know why the annotate is not working. That drives me a little buggy. But at any rate, it's not, which would identify other galaxies in this image as well, if there were any. So let's have a look at something else now that's in range. Okay, here's one for you. This is IC 1396. It's called the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. And once we get it up here, you'll certainly see why they call it the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. So let's have a quick look at that. We're going to move the telescope. And you can see on the screen that the mount is moving the telescope right now to the target. Once it acquires the target, it's going to do what's called plate solving. Plate solving is just a fancy way of saying it has in its system, in its database, all the stars in the night sky that we can see, and it compares, when it takes an image, it compares the image to that database of stars and will align the telescope to the right location. It really is a wonder. Although I do recommend everybody try to learn the night sky as best you can, and try to learn where the different constellations are and different stars and their names and that sort of thing. But here in Canada, especially in the summertime, we have extremely limited observing time because the days are very, very long, and it takes quite a bit to get the sky dark enough to do this. This is an ideal time of year for it. It gets dark fairly early, and you can start imaging at a reasonable hour. In the summertime, it's sometimes 11 o'clock or at night or later before you can actually start imaging to get anything with a quality. So now we're going after the target, and it's going to start doing its imaging. Guiding here is actually quite good. The winds have died down a bit since I started, and still little gusts you can see here and there. The guiding will go up. Normally and amazingly, I actually guide here in the 2 to 3, 0.2 to 0.3 range. Right now we're kind of pushing in the 0.3938, which is really good for the skies that we have here. A lot of things can affect your guiding as well, not just wind. The seeing in the night sky, as they call it, the transparency of the night sky, what phase, again, the moon is in. All these things can affect your guiding. This scope works really, really well. This Gear 60 is a guide scope. It's not really meant to do that specifically, but it pairs up really good with my RASA 11, which is an 11-inch telescope. I used to have a 14-inch, which if you, again, look at any of my videos, will find out that it had a couple of unfortunate accidents. So I decided to go with the RASA, and I'm very pleased with the RASA. I mean, it does a great job. There are some things about it that I would change if I could, but again, it is what it is. It's a mid-range in terms of expense on the kind of consumer level telescopes. There is a slightly a bigger version of this, equivalent to a 14-inch RASA. which they don't call it a 14-inch Rasa for some reason or other. They have another name for it. But really, this is a semi-wide field telescope. I did have an 8-inch Rasa before, which I sold, which was more of a wide field telescope, the 8-inch. But to get the fainter galaxies and fainter targets, the 11-inch works better for me. I did buy the Gear 60 for wide field. I haven't used it for that yet, and there's a few reasons. I had some major health issues over the summer, and really didn't get back to the observatory till the last couple of weeks, to be honest. And hopefully we'll get out here more often now and be able to do live streams like this one. We'll be on for another half hour or so probably, and kind of go through some more targets. We are counting down here on IC 1396. And you'll see the coloration is a little different. I'm just looking at another monitor I have off to the side here, and that's because I am using the hydrogen alpha filter on this particular telescope tonight, and that's to bring out the hydrogen alpha, which is what most nebula are composed of, the majority of them. There are other filters you can get as well. Again, some people shoot RGB, which is red, green, blue filters. Then they'll shoot H alpha. Then they'll shoot other types of filters like SH filters, that type of thing, for different types of gases within the nebula to bring them out. For me, this filter works really great actually. It's an NBZ filter. It's not designed specifically for a fast telescope like the Rasa. The Rasa, by the way, the whole advantage of a Rasa is its very fast telescope. It shoots at about f2, 1.9 to f2, which means it has tremendous light gathering ability to rapidly build your images. Another telescope like my 14-inch, there we are, to build the same image would take much longer, and a lot more subs to do that. I'm just going to get rid of that histogram. There you go. So this is the Elephant Trunk Nebula. It's visually very nice to look at, and of course it would be considerably better with many images stacked together and processed in PixInsight or other processing software. You can kind of see why they call it the elephant trunk right here. This looks like an elephant trunk, so that's where it got its name. And it's a very beautiful nebula to look at, and you can see the reddish color in it. The reddish is, of course, the H alpha. And yeah, it's a great nebula. Everything is running quite well here tonight. We actually have our gain at about 200, and our camera is actually cooled to minus 20.5 degrees Celsius. So you might be asking, why do you have to have your camera so cold? Well, the camera internally cools itself. It also has a specific fan on it for making sure frost, which can be a real problem this time of year, doesn't build up on the eyepiece. I'm sorry, not the eyepiece, the lens of the camera. And it also eliminates a lot of the circuit noise that can be inherent. Now, this is not a CCD camera, which I've had in the past. CCD cameras, there's still some around, but we've switched over to CMOS cameras for the most part now, which have much better chips in them and are far more efficient in their ability to take these types of images. So that is the Elephant Trunk Nebula. Very beautiful nebula, actually. And it is a bigger complex, but again, we're using the 11-inch RASA, so we're zoomed in quite tight to it. So let's see what else we have here. It's about 9:02, so we still have some targets we can go to. I would stay out later, but I have a personal engagement I have to go to tomorrow, and I have to be up quite early for that. Otherwise, I'd stay out here much later. But certainly another stream will go through a lot more. So let's have a look and see what else we can find here. California Nebula is nice, but not really anything spectacular to look at. The North American Nebula is very high up in the sky right now. We have the Sol Nebula, which is not a lot to look at. The Pleiades are neat to look at, but they're just rising in the east right now. The Lagoon Nebula is way too low. The Lobster Claw I actually looked at earlier, which was pretty neat. Triangulum Galaxy, it's not really galaxy season anymore, so a lot of the galaxies are below the horizon. What else do we have here? The Pelican Nebula is kind of neat to look at. We can look at that one, or the Jellyfish is neat, but it hasn't risen yet. And the Butterfly I looked at earlier as well. There's the Butterfly Nebula A, which is a nice target. What else do we have? The Butterfly B. So the Butterfly Nebula is a very big complex of gas. So there are different, it's usually split into different components. Monkey Head is not really available to us. Sol Nebula is quite low. Pac-Man Nebula is there. Let's see if there's any couple of different M39. And the Wizard Nebula is actually quite high. Trifid Nebula is great, but it's very low right now. You're probably saying, just get to one of them, would you? Just looking for ones that are interesting to look at. So the Wizard Nebula is in the northern sky right now. It's fairly high up. There are a few trees in that direction in my neighbor's yard, but let's have a look and see if we can see the Wizard. For all you Harry Potter fans. I actually did some imaging on the comet that's in our sky right now earlier. I'm going to post that on the Facebook page, the Brampton Observatory Facebook page, once I process it in the next couple of days for you to have a look at. It's been a real challenge to see that comet in our light polluted skies. People have seen it. It was quite bright earlier, but lower to the horizon. It's getting higher in the sky now, but it's also on its way. It's gone around the sun. It is on its way out of the solar system. So it's getting fainter and fainter all the time and harder to see visually. if at all, at this point. But people have taken some fantastic pictures, even in like Oakville and places like that, which are just down along Lake Ontario. So if you do get a chance to get into some darker skies, you still may be able to see it. That comet, by the way, is not going to be back for sometime around 80,000 years. So it is literally a once in a lifetime comet. Okay, so our target has been centered. It's going to give us a quick preview image now, which we will see pretty much nothing. Yep, dark, and that's because we have to adjust the histogram a bit. And we'll just do an auto histogram on it. So you can start to see a little bit of the wizard here. In the background, it's quite faded at this point because we haven't taken anything longer than a 5-second shot of it. So let's take it up to, let's do again a 3-minute image, or I'm sorry, yeah, let's do a 5-minute image on this one and see how it turns out. Again, just to let you know, the images you see are just raw, pretty much single images or subs, as we call them. You would stack many of these together to build that image up to look like something that you would want to put on your wall. Oh, so my guiding went off for a second. So my telescope, yeah, I'm not sure. It's high up. We may be getting some cloud passing by. Wouldn't surprise me because the guiding is really high. Let's have a quick look. So this is what guiding looks like, by the way. So you're seeing this star kind of distort, and it's a little bit all over the place. So these are stars that the software is using to guide on, and yeah, I suspect we are getting a little bit of high cloud, which is never good. So that can certainly cut your imaging short. It is guiding again, but the guide number is very high, considering. So I'm just going to have a quick look outside and see what's actually going on in the sky. Although I do have software on my other computer that does that. And it's saying the sky is clear. So this is just an update for this software, so it may not be 100% accurate as well. So I do see some change in the sky quality where it has dropped a little bit. So I'm not sure exactly why that is. My guess is some high cloud. But I'm going to have a quick look. Be right back. So, as suspected, there is some high wispy cloud out there, and that's what's causing my guiding to go a little wacky. But still should be, the tracking should be pretty good on this mount. It's usually fantastic. But again, different conditions, and as you get more into astrophotography, you'll begin to understand the different weather conditions that can cause you to call it a night. You know, if I were doing actually imaging to save this as a project and do the processing on it, I would be watching much more carefully on the sky conditions, and if they started to degrade substantially, would just stop. Uh, at this point, it's not too bad. It's wispy cloud, it's fairly high, but it does interfere with the quality of your imaging, to be sure. Clear, dark nights are the best nights. And a lot of people don't image when the moon is in brighter phases. Sometimes I do. If the moon is in the rising in the east, I'll image in the west or the north and until it comes up. My house kind of blocks the moon a little bit as it's rising, so it does give me a little more time to get some imaging in. So we're coming up now to about 23 seconds to see what pops out for our Wizard Nebula. And we'll see how that looks. Sorry, you see me looking up here once in a while. I'm just looking at my other monitor to see if anyone is in the chat, or how the image is actually looking out there on another monitor. So we've got the Wizard coming up now. 300 seconds. Wow! Hey, that came out really, really great, actually. I'm quite impressed with that. It never ceases to amaze me when I look at these images when they come out, just how many stars there are in the sky. And if you're in a city, urban environment, that you've completely, for the most part, lost that view, right? I mean, when you look at this image, you see just an amazing amount of stars in the sky. And in a dark, dark sky, you'd be able to see a lot of those. You wouldn't. I've seen astronomers go to dark sky sites and they're not able to find constellations that normally they would be able to easily look in the sky and see, because there are so many stars. So that they lose their perspective on what they're looking at and where they're looking. So it takes some practice, if you do live in a dark sky site, to reacquire your visual knowledge of the night sky, because it is so amazingly full of stars, and even some nebula can be seen. Galaxies, you can see the Andromeda galaxy in a very dark sky visually with your eyes, not even with a telescope. So we've sadly lost that, and the majority of people in their lifetime will never get to see that, and that's really too bad. There are dark sky preserves out there. I know Muskoka has an event. I think it may be over now, but had an event in November, or sorry, October. I'm not sure if they have anything in November. If you go up there, and they have guides to kind of guide you through the night sky, which things like that are really fantastic. If you do get to go, I really recommend it. Or even if you have a friend who has a cottage somewhere under dark skies, go out at night, look up and just see the amazing sky as it is, because if you live in the city, you will never see something like this, unfortunately. As a matter of fact, it was many years ago, they had rolling blackouts in Los Angeles, and all the lights went out. I mean, it was completely huge blackout, and people were looking up in the night sky, and they were calling the police and 911 and everything else. in fear because they were seeing the Milky Way galaxy and they had no idea what they were looking at. They were actually afraid. So you can imagine looking up for the first time and seeing the Milky Way in all of its glory. And I'm sure you've, if you haven't, you've, seen pictures of it, at least, and, as it's visible from Earth, and how much that would change your perspective and maybe even scare you, because you have no idea what's going on in the night sky. So that is the Wizard Nebula, known as SH2-142. So we have time for, at least a couple of more targets. It's 9:17 here. Those wispy clouds are coming in. As you can see, my guiding is way up again. So let's have a look and see what else we can see other than the Wizard. Yeah, that's just rising. You know what? IC 1340. I'm not gonna say much about this one, but you science fiction fans may have some idea of what this particular nebula looks like, and I hope I can get it all in frame because it'll I always look at it and the first thing I see is, well, something interesting. So here we go. Let's have a look. It's also a very colorful nebula. It's not just H alpha, there are other gases in there as well. And the telescope is swinging around to another part of the sky. Shortly it will take an image. I'm kind of hoping my polar alignment hasn't gone out as well. Every once in a while you do have to adjust that. It shouldn't, but stranger things. But I think in this case it's just the sky conditions that are causing my guiding to be off a bit. So I'll wait till a night where it's really clear, and if the guiding is dead on where it usually is, then I'll know. So it detected 2,486 stars. It's using those stars to plot its position. It's now found its position and is going to give us a preview image, which again will not amount to anything. Put our histogram back up, go to auto. So you can sort of start to see the image a little bit. You can see some of the different colorization here, and let's do a okay. Let's do a 3-minute image. That might be a little better, rather than keep you guys waiting for 5 minutes. Though obviously with a 5-minute image you're going to get far much more detail. But 3-minute image should work pretty well. This is actually part of the Cygnus loop, which is a group of nebula. It's called a loop because if you were to see a full version of it, which with this telescope you couldn't because it's too high a magnification, you'd see a variety of different nebula in a loop kind of form. So our guiding is back down to 4, so 0.4 I should say. So that's acceptable, but again, it does tell me that there are some elements in the night sky right now. Again, some high wispy cloud, and that's definitely affecting. Also, transparency. The higher you are looking straight up in the sky away from the horizon, the better the conditions are because of the thickness of the atmosphere. As you are straight up overhead, the atmosphere is much thinner, so there's less interference. If you've ever seen a video shot, zoom shot of the moon by a TV camera or video camera, you see that waviness. Well, that's distortion in the atmosphere. And we have to deal with that as well. And there are some nights where the atmosphere is much more turbulent, especially if you're shooting lower toward the horizon or just above. Then the atmosphere is much thicker, and your images can get a little distorted. So we've got about 30 seconds left on this particular image. I might do a 5-minute one just afterwards, but we'll see how this one comes out first. Unfortunately, the orientation of this image is not you're probably going to struggle a little bit to see what this actually looks like to many people. But if you turn your head to the left side of your screen, then you'll see it, I think, a little more clearly. So here it comes. There we go. So if you were to turn your head a little bit toward the left in particular, by the way, look at the gas structure on that. You can see the greenish turquoise, the wispy hydrogen alpha. Right? So it's really pretty cool. So if you were to look at this on the side, tilt your head kind of like that, and I'll turn off the histogram. Well, actually, let me darken it up a bit. There we go. And we'll turn off the histogram. So what does that look like to you if you turn to the side? Well, to me, it looks a little bit like Alien. And a lot of people have said they see that as well. Obviously, it's not an alien, it's a bunch of gas floating out in space. But just, humans were designed to recognize patterns. So we try to put a pattern to everything we see. If you look up at the clouds, hey, you'll see rabbits and whales and dolphins and all kinds of other things in the clouds. And that's just because the human brain is designed to find patterns. And they're designed to find patterns because way back when, one of the patterns we'd be looking for is something coming to eat us. So that's basically the rationale behind why we can look at an image like this, turn it slightly to its side, and say, holy crap, that looks like Alien from the movie Alien. Which it does a little bit. So a really neat image, and you can see all the gas structure, very thick gas structure along here. And this is actually even larger. You can start to see it up here as well. Again, if we were to take a longer image of that, we'd see more of that. And pretty cool. So I think we had a good look at this one. So we'll actually move along to another image. And let's take a look and see what we can find. It's about 9:26, so I got another 15-20 minutes here. Pelican Nebula, because yes, it looks like a pelican. The Sagittarius cluster. Let's go down the list a wee bit here and see what's what. M110 is a galaxy. It's fairly high up. So let's have a quick look at that one. Actually, it's up in the east, so hopefully nothing is blocking me there. So let's have a quick look and see if we can actually see this one. It will not appear as big as Andromeda. It's much further away. It's funny because when I see what I'm looking at, obviously there's a bit of a delay as it goes out to YouTube. So I'm just seeing the mount now turning on the other monitor, where it's pretty much already finished on mine. So we detected 1194 stars, which is great. It's actually going to auto center again to make sure it's in the right location. It counts down, it takes another image, says yes, you're in the right spot, and detected 958 stars that time. So usually when this happens, it means there was some form of interference there. And if I look at exactly where that is, yeah, it's kind of looking out towards a tree in my neighbor's yard. I think it's just on the other side of it, so I think we're okay. Let's turn on the histogram here and have a quick look. Yeah, so it's a little off. You can start to sort of see it down here. Let's bring the histogram a little darker. Oops, way too dark. So it did not actually find it very well, and I think that's because the tree is blocking it. But let's do a 2-minute exposure and see what we get on that. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this one because it really isn't quite where we want it to be, but you can see the galaxy here. So I'm just going to detect. So what this is doing is it's calculating star sizes, right? Just so I see that my focus is okay. I do not know why. Oh, don't know why it's not annotating. That's kind of strange. May need a software update. However, well, it's off for some reason or other. So we got about 74 seconds left on this. Guiding is acceptable. And as I say, you can see galaxy here, and we'll see how much of M110 we actually get. M, by the way, just stands for Messier object. Charles Messier developed, and not just Charles Messier, but over time developed a catalog of objects in the night sky, which are known as Messier objects. You can certain times of year do what we call a Messier marathon, which means you can actually try to see, either by telescope imaging or through visual imaging, or visual telescope I should say, all of those different objects in the night sky in one night. That's the goal. But there are only certain times of year you can actually do that everything is visible. So let's see what we get out of this. got is a very bright image. So we're going to have to go back to the histogram. Let's go to auto. So, okay, so there you can see 110 is actually one of the galaxies that orbits Andromeda. And that's here in the background. So the galaxy we were seeing on the bottom is actually Andromeda galaxy that we looked at earlier. This is M110. This is the satellite galaxy, and obviously much smaller. And but again, we have some of those ourselves in our galaxy. As I said earlier, the small and large Magellanic Clouds are actually satellite galaxies of the Milky Way. So let's get rid of that. We did look at that and see something a little more spectacular. Too bad the globular clusters are not really visible this time of year yet. The Bubble Nebula. Let's have a look at the Bubble. The Bubble is in the north. Gonna adjust the telescope. It does have to slew a little bit. So the Bubble Nebula is actually pretty cool to look at as well. An image. It literally looks like there's a bubble popping out of the center of it, which it is literally a bubble of gas being pushed out. Okay, so we've got some good stars there. Target is centered quick, so that means we had probably little to no interference. And we've got our test image up, preview image as we call it, and there it is. And already actually you can see the star in the center here that's probably causing that bubble, and a little bit of the outline of the nebula. Here's a cluster of stars down here. So some pretty amazing. Why is that annotate not? Oh, annotate finally works. Don't know why it didn't before. So this is the Bubble Nebula, also known as NGC 7635, and this is another Messier object, all right, M52 down here. And if you have software like this particular software that is designed to work with this camera, then you can actually see what you're targeting. And also, like, here's another target up here, SH2 159. So it'll tell you what you're looking at basically in the area of the image. So let's go with 300 seconds. This will probably be my last image for tonight, so I'm going to do a 5-minute image on it. And as you can see, those objects will come out much more clearly once we do a longer exposure. Camera temperature is really holding quite well at minus 19.9. If it's set for minus 20, it will always vary a little bit. And hopefully we will get a good image out of this, of the Bubble Nebula. It's not a huge target, but it is an interesting target to look at. And there is some other nebulosity in this area. You can probably see it out here to the left a little bit. And depending on your monitor, how good your monitor is, or whether you're watching YouTube on your TV or whatever, sometimes the better clarity you'll get on the higher end monitors. Lower end computer monitors, yeah, not so much. So as this is doing it, I want to thank everybody again who have stopped by and took the time to actually watch the video. I'd like you to watch as much as you can because it does help basically get the word out there more about the channel itself, and the more watch hours I have, the more YouTube promotes the site. And if you subscribe, even better, that also helps, or hit a like on the page so that again the algorithm that YouTube uses puts us out there more in the public. I think it's really important to be able to do this. I love doing it, and I hope to do it more often. I did do some of the solar eclipse that we had, and I did some solar stuff about a week ago. I do plan on doing some daytime solar as well in the coming weeks, and eventually I do hope to get a solar scope specifically. I have a solar filter now, a white light solar filter, and I'm able to use that, but it doesn't. I mount it on the Gear 60 and use that as the telescope, but it doesn't really give me the detail with the camera that I'm using for the sun that I'd like to get. So hopefully at some point, when funds allow, I'll be able to get a specific solar scope that will give you all the glory and amazing views of the sun, especially the gases coming off of it and that type of thing. We've had a lot of large CMEs, coronal mass ejections, lately that have caused aurora here on Earth to be exceptional. We were even able to see some of it in light polluted Brampton, where I am. Mind you, it was quite faint, and you were able to get better quality, better view of it through a camera. But they're just short distances away. Again, in places like Oakville, a little bit north of here, excuse me, you were able to get really great views. Losing my voice here, sorry about that. So yeah, would be great to be able to get better images. I can see some sunspots with the camera I'm using, but it's really not advantageous to that, so I'm going to check into a different camera as well to see if that on the Gear will help somewhat. So about 10 seconds, this will be our last image of the night. I do have to sign off, but I again thank you for having a look at the video, and we'll get on again sometime real soon. And the image is just coming down now. And I see some wispy cloud must be out there again because our guiding is up. Oh, there it is. All right. Awesome. So this is the bubble of the Bubble Nebula. You can probably see that on your screen. Depending on the size of your monitor, I can zoom in here a little bit. I don't know how much it'll let me zoom. You can see the actual bubble. This is probably the star that's causing that bubble pushing out from its solar wind all the gases. Really neat target. You can see that nebulosity that I talked about in the background on this side as well. Large cluster of stars here. So this, I think, is actually part of the double cluster, which, by the way, visually through a telescope is magnificent. If you ever get a telescope, be sure in the northern sky to look for the double cluster. It is probably one of my favorite visual targets to actually look at. It's a cluster of 2 clusters of stars, and it's colorful and just spectacular to look at visually. So that's our Bubble Nebula. The Bubble Nebula is a great target as well. I'm just going to remove actually darken it up again here with the histogram a bit. There we go. Take the histogram out of your way to let you look at that. And I'm just looking at it on my other monitor. Looks pretty good zoomed up, actually. So thanks for tuning in. I do have to sign out for tonight, but hopefully maybe through the week, if the weather's good, and we'll do some live broadcasting for a short time anyway. Unfortunately, we all have to work, me included, so I can't stay out too late during the week, but for sure we will get out and definitely maybe even do some solar observing and imaging. So there you see it, the Bubble Nebula with the annotation working. I'm not sure why it didn't work before, but hey, I'll take it. Anyway, everyone, you have a wonderful night, and enjoy the rest of the weekend, and clear skies to everyone. Take care.